Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-hosts Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What is up, coaches? It is week 1 in Oklahoma. Week 1. A lot of games during week 0 last week because that's the new thing. But it's officially football season in Oklahoma. Kenny, you played a game already. How'd y'all's game go?
We won. We played a team that we had played earlier this year or last year. It was 32-33 last year, and you never know year to year if teams are better or not as good, or if you're as good or not as good till you play. We were able to win pretty convincingly. Still got a lot to work on, but we won 35-8. Had 500 and some odd yards of offense, and had a shutout until the fourth quarter. We put our younger kids in there, and so still a lot to work on. Sometimes it's always good to win, but sometimes in those wins, kids come in and they feel like you're going to just, pat them on the back and tell them we've arrived. And so you got to kind of bring them back down to earth Monday with a film session and about the stuff we've got to improve on. And
for sure,
a lot of good positives. Winning is hard to do. So I'm never going to go celebrate a win. But Monday is time to come back down to earth and see all the stuff we've got to get better at. It was a good win for us. We had 4 kids out. So we had 4 starters out on defense. And for them to, manage to hold a real athletic group to no score is good. The bad part of that is there were a lot of guys that didn't do exactly what we asked them to do. And so we've got to kind of correct that stuff. And I'm sure a lot of guys are going through the same thing. So I'm not going to,
that week 1, getting the rust off and seeing if the kids really understand what you've been teaching them at full speed. I mean, there's a lot going into it, right?
And nobody's in shape. Like, no one's in shape week 1, especially at high school. You got kids going both ways. And we were up tempo the whole game. We ran 75 plays of offense. They ran 35. So that was a good thing. But I think you play your way into shape. We didn't have anybody cramp. We're big feed the cats type mentality. We're not all the way in there, but I'm a big fan of Tony Holler. Yeah. What he believes in, and it's always good to see it, week 1 where you're not in shape, no one's in shape, but your kids seem to handle it better than the other team does. So that's always good.
Yeah. I had intended to ask you before we hit record, but now we're here, so we're just going to put it on the air. This is your second year going into the no conditioning, right? Right. How were the cramps and all the stuff that everybody sees anyway? Did you see a minimize of that because your kids are just not as worn out?
Somewhat. I mean, a lot of it, we didn't have any cramps Friday night. And we had some kids that had to get a rest, like everybody else does. But
for sure,
we don't feel like we were in worse shape or better shape than the other team. And, we'll see as the year goes on. I think that's the true test is as the year goes on, are you still fresh when the games matter? I think that's I think that's where the conditioning shows up. Not so much week 1 or 2, and it does show up week 1 or 2, but week 8, 9, 10, 11, when everybody's sore, are your kids maybe less sore than other kids are?
Yeah, I love thinking about it because that stacks. Those days stack pretty quick, right? So when you start looking at, hey, by week 10, if you're conditioning and you've ran 3 extra games worth of yardage every week, that's a lot of games. You ran a 40-game schedule just because you wanted to condition all year, right? So that's pretty wild. I'm excited to kind of see year 2 and that philosophy, that mindset, and just how it all plays out because it obviously worked really well last year. So,
right. Well, we went to Thursdays, 30-minute Thursdays, or less. And so, unfortunately, this week we went 35 minutes. It was our first Thursday. We had to work a couple things out, but we did that, and we're going to continue that all year. I think basically we're not off on Thursday because we do usually get a lift in, and we'll watch a little film or kind of go through some stuff. But we're on and off the field hopefully in 30 minutes or less, and hopefully that helps us kind of save our legs even a little bit more.
For sure. Well, that's awesome. I look forward to seeing how y'all are doing things on that part. Let's jump into the quote of the week real quick, and then we'll push on through the ads and such.
Yeah, quote of the week. All these are, by the way, coming from Team Themes Volume 5 that is out. So Team Themes Volume 5 is out. It's over at fbcoachsimpson.com. 9 different weeks worth of themes. We're going through them right now with our kids. This quote came from competitive. We talk a lot with our kids about being competitive, what that really means. You can be competitive and not just be a jerk. There's ways to be competitive the right way. So this quote kind of speaks to that. The author's unknown, but it says, to be great in anything, you must be competitive. But to be truly great, you must also be compassionate. And I think the idea of we want to be competitive, we want to get after it, but we don't want to take it to the point where nobody wants to be around you, where you can show I'm being competitive. What's the purpose of being competitive is to help my team. You're doing it to the point, to the detriment of your team. I think there can become a little bit of a balance there. And so we talked a lot with our kids about, how to be competitive the right way, how to compete the right way. And that's kind of one of the quotes we look at with that.
I get just the sportsmanship in general, right? When I think compassion, I think, just take your foot out of the throttle when you got them down, whatever it is. There's times for everything, I suppose, right? Sometimes a little payback and spoonful of sugar helps your medicine go down. But, being able to pull the throttle out and say, hey, we outcoached you this time. Let's get on to the next one or whatever.
When we look at between the whistles, between the whistles, man, it's not a war. That's the wrong word because wars are different, but it's a fight. Basically between the whistles, whatever goes. But when the whistle is over, it's over. And understanding that line is what we're trying to teach our kids.
Yeah. Nope, 100%. Had a good friend of mine call me this week and said they got blown out pretty bad and took their starters out in the middle of the third, and the other team just kept them in there, kept working them deep into the fourth. And I thought, that stinks because I kind of know both guys too. So it was like, I hate, I'm part of that, your job is to stop them, but also you got to have that compassion, right? You got to understand that it's week one. We're all trying to work things out. So, comes around, goes around sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, sweet, Coach. Let's share some other ways that a coach can make things simple for their staff and athletes. All right, guys, if you're live, this is where we're going to go in and stitch in some digital ads. Yeah, I think we've got them. I think we're good here. Here we go. Appreciate that, Coach. Great stuff as always. If you haven't listened to the ads recently, we've still got Ace Sports doing things big for us. So go over to acesports.com. You can email mark.bridges@acesports.com. That's for all of your video board needs. And listen, I probably didn't know how good of a program they're really running over there, but you talk about the customization options. It isn't just a bland video board. We're talking about how good the fundraising is and how much they hold your hand and help you work this thing to get your fundraiser kind of rocket ship out of the, off the platform, if you will. But the customization options and the quality of the product, when I sat and talked to Jason, their owner, and I sat and talked with him for a full night in San Antonio, and he was telling me we over construct all of our things. We take the boards and we're already so much higher in quality because they're going to give you a 10-year warranty. And that 10-year warranty means that their product's got to last the 10 years. No one else is going to do that. So they over-construct and they sell you a way better product than the other guys. So there's so many good things about their company, but I think Jason's always at least got the people he's working for. He's got them in mind. So go reach out to acesports.com. And then Winning Edge Performance Analytics. We did our second half game Friday using the WEPA. I'm shortening it. Doug, I got to shorten it. Winning Edge Performance Analytics. A lot to say. The WEPA system, it's still fantastic. Waking up the next morning and your film's all tagged and you don't have to spend 2 or 3 hours going back and making a lot of corrections. There's some, right? Because we're humans and we have some human error, but man, for the most part, it's very quick. Seeing the reports throughout the game and kind of what's working, what isn't is great. But the big one is that the film being tagged out. So jump into the WEPA system, go over to winningedgeperformanceanalytics.com. You got to type out the whole thing the first time. Okay. It's one of those newer websites. So it's going to try to take you to his Facebook and some other stuff. You can email me or Doug and you'll find it. Doug's is going across the bottom down there. You can find his. All right, man, let's jump into the questions here. We're talking practice for game week, right? So, Kenny, you've already had a game week. You played. Was that y'all's week 0 or week 1?
Week 0.
Okay,
Week 0.
I kind of thought we were on the same schedule, but I wasn't 100% sure. We're into week 1 and officially our first game this week. So we're going to talk a little game week practice prep here on a Tuesday morning. I'm sure that most of you have some version of this, but I've found that there's always a place to go in and make changes and make things better, right? To make improvements on the product we've been using. And I've seen a lot of teams practice schedules. So 6 years in, and I've been on 5 teams and had 6 different head coaches throughout those years. So I've seen a lot of different versions of a game week practice schedule, including yours and Joe's and everyone else's. So let's just talk for a minute, Coach. Kind of how do you set up that practice week for a season? During the season, what's your split? I know you do the big little big, and I look forward to hearing about it again here. But what's your split for that Indy and teen time? And then just kind of how are you tracking things? How long of a practice you want to have?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to think about, and a lot of this depends on how much time you had preseason as well. How your season's structured. So for us, we have like a preseason, through summer through basically through August, and then we have non-conference games where we're going to be a little bit heavier in our practice time because we're still kind of in preseason. You're playing games, but they don't count quite as much as the other ones. So we're still going to push a little bit harder there. And then we have conference games. So I'm going to kind of deal with just general things on here and tweak it to what might fit with you. Most of the time, if you're at the high school level, realistically, you're going to have 3 real practice days and then whatever you want to do on Thursday. And I'll get into that later on. And then generally Mondays, a lot of guys, like for us, a lot of times we'll have a JV game that day. So we got to kind of manipulate that a little bit too. So you're stressed for time. What I would say to be careful of is doing too much time. And Tony Holler, his quote is don't burn the steak, don't overcook what you're going to do. I've learned this a long time ago. While you do need to practice, you do need to get better. You want to make sure that your racehorses are as fresh as possible on Friday night. Like that's just old coach always told me that, get your guys to the starting line as fresh as you can. You're going to have a better chance of winning.
That's right.
Now, you got to correct things and you got to coach them and you got to improve. So all that's got to happen too. You can't just not practice and roll the ball out Friday. That's not going to go very well. But you got to always think of the end in mind of we want to be as fresh as we can. So the questions become, as you're building out your practice schedule, what can we do without? What can we cut? What can we cut? What can we cut? And that's always kind of what I keep at the front of my mind when I'm building out our practice schedule. And then what ends up happening is the stuff that makes it into the schedule is the stuff that you think is the most important stuff you got to work on. And so that makes your practice way more efficient and allows you to shrink your time, keep the kids fresh and active. Now, we do a lot of film with our kids. So I say a lot, we do about 20 minutes a day in groups with our kids, which could be film or walkthrough depending on the coach. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they're going to get 20 minutes worth of a position group meeting /film /walkthrough / whatever that guy wants to do. So I'm not counting that in the next part. Like I'm not counting that in our on the field practice. Because for some of us, that's just film. For some of our guys, let's go to the weight room and walk through some stuff. For some of our guys, that might be on a whiteboard. It's whatever works for their guys. So I'm not really counting that. And then we try to lift at least 3 times a week, if not 4 times a week, for about 20 to 25 minutes. So you're looking at about a 45-minute block there where we're going to get film and a lift. We're lucky enough at our school to do that during the period. Like we have an athletic period. That's kind of when we do that. Not every school has that, I know. So you may have to structure that where you lift before school or you do film before school or whatever that needs to look like. But we think those are extremely important. Keep our kids strong, mentally prepare our kids. If we can do those things, we can shorten the time we need on the field. We've already had several podcasts on how to watch film, so I'm going to kind of move quickly through that.
For sure.
Then our goal is to keep our practices. The longest practice of the day usually is Tuesday. That's usually kind of our bigger, heavier practice. This week, ironically, we have a game tonight, Tuesday, so we had to move it to Wednesday. But Tuesday or Wednesday is going to be our heavier day. Usually for us, Monday is helmet only. Our kids are pretty sore from the game. We've brought them in, we've lifted them, we've filmed them. We're installing whatever we're looking at. We're installing what we're looking at seeing. So our Monday practice, I've actually got one right here. If you're watching it, this is what our Monday looked like yesterday. So on Monday practice, we actually went a little bit longer this Monday because we knew Tuesday we were going to go shorter.
Yeah.
But Monday, our practice will go, I think we went about an hour 30, which our normal Monday practice will go about an hour 20 or less. Usually heavier special teams on Monday because any installs you got to do. And then a lot of it is, I don't mean to say walk through, but a lot of it is kind of here's how they're going to line up. Here's formation recognition. Here's what we're going to see, especially for the defensive side of the ball. A lot of formation recognition, a lot of walk through routes, a lot of walk through base plays they're going to run. So while it's an hour 15, probably 20 minutes of it, we're actually moving pretty quickly.
Right.
So it's kind of I'd call that a light day. Our Tuesday practices will usually go about an hour 40, hour 45, depending on the practice. We are going to do not as much special teams. We will do special teams every day, but not as much. And then that's kind of our heavier individual day. Like if you're going to get individual work, we'll do some correction on Monday, but Tuesday is kind of our heavier individual day where you're going to get more time with your kids in their own groups. We always do team. So we'll always, and I'll kind of get to how we do team here in a minute. And then we on Wednesday, we went down to about an hour 20 to an hour 30 for our Wednesday practice. And our Wednesdays, we've kind of modified. We'll do the first half of practice helmet only, and then we'll put shoulder pads on for the second half of practice for team. So it's a lighter day. When we go team, we are full speed, but we are not as heavy in what we're doing. So not as much individual work. What you do in individual work is generally helmet only. A lot more team type settings or group type settings on Wednesday. And shoulder pads will come on for inside drill or team. Our goal for Thursday is to go 30 minutes or less. I kind of mentioned that in the opening. For us, Thursdays, we're going to try to get on the field, get off the field. I mean, get them on, get them off. That way they're fresh and ready to go. So basically the way I look at it is Tuesday, we kind of get after them a little bit. Like we'll practice pretty hard on a Tuesday. Wednesday, there's elements that are kind of hard, but it's shorter. And then Thursday, we're letting their legs kind of recover. We are going to go full speed through our plays and specialty, but we're going to do it once. Lineup kickoff, boom, we're good, coach, we're good, move on. Next thing, and we move on. So our normal practice, our Tuesday practice is about 50-50 as far as individual pod group work versus team, where our Wednesday is probably 75% team and 25% individual, whatever. Monday is like 90-10, like 10% fix your individual, 90% team groups. So we don't all I'm not a big fan of doing all 11 defenders. So when I say team, that might be our front 5 are over here and our back 6 are over here, but I kind of consider that similar when you're walking through and putting stuff in. Schedule is fluid. I mean, you kind of mentioned that on there, Daniel. And then big thing for us is, we're going to try our best. I'll talk about situations here down at the end, but we try to work that during our team periods. And so we do some unique stuff during our team portions, but that's roughly how we set up our practice schedule for the week. Now, like I said all that, this week we had Monday, we had to go longer. Tuesday, we have a JV game. So Wednesday will become our heavy day. As long as you're not being heavy on Thursday, I think you're okay.
Yeah, we do a lot of the same. Time-wise, we're more similar from day to day, more repetitive. But But like I said, I've seen a whole bunch of these schedules now, and it seems like most people try to keep that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday heavier. I loved what they did at Owasso, and Bill did he called it Wednesday, WINS, and that was like most people's Thursday, right? It was a very light day, kind of like you said, Kenny. Just come out and you did a half light and half let's get it on, and his was very similar to that. So, it's fun to see how different people are just keeping miles off the car if if you kind of follow there. What we have to do a little bit different is, we're not a two platoon team. We kind of everybody plays both ways, and so we have to find a way to work JV and varsity at the same time. And we have enough kids to play JV. Not saying that a starter won't be out there at an odd position or something. You know what I mean? We'll kind of just mix things up as need be. But we started this thing last year, and it was like the purple and gold teams, and so the kids are identified preseason which side they're going to be on, but it's essentially their varsity or JV, but then they come out and we're all practicing at the same time. And so as an offensive coach, which our coaches are more one side of the ball, you're just coaching quarterbacks all the time or running backs or O-line or whatever it is that you coach, because you got your varsity and then you get your JV version of that. And we flip that during practice, which is nice because you don't have to like, hey, JV, go on that other field over there, or nope, y'all start at 5 p.m. when everybody else is done. We don't have to do any of that. We kind of keep them all together. And you started this whole thing off talking efficiency, right? What gets into the practice schedule? Try having to teach it twice. You better shorten it, because otherwise you're going to be out there for 4 hours, So we do all the same. We do a lot of pod work, kind of like you do, Kenny, ND, all that stuff. But we do it twice. So you get your varsity and then your JV, or vice versa. One side of the ball will get JV first and then varsity. And then we kind of finalize everything with a nice little team period. I think fluidity is the answer, which is probably the most said thing on the podcast, is that, hey, there is no right way. You better be able to answer questions you have, because you don't know how many kids you're going to have, right? You started this season with a team on your schedule that dropped down to 8-man or 9-man or whatever y'all play over there. And it's like, that guy probably had a schedule he's been using for 10 years. And then all of a sudden his team's cut in half and he's got less players and he's trying to figure things out. So I think that at the end of the day, you probably shouldn't have, we talk about practice shells over on the other podcast a lot. Monday should look a lot like Monday every week, but that doesn't mean it has to be locked in concrete, right? This stuff can definitely be changed up. I'm sure that if you had a problem with a position group or with a certain play, your schedule is going to change. You're going to want to go out and fix whatever. Maybe Buck was bad this week. I don't know how it would be, but that's something you can go out and fix. Maybe our two-back stuff isn't looking as good as it should. Or maybe the kids just don't understand what we're trying to accomplish with a certain read play, whatever it is. You can add a little more time to that and keep things fluid. Just having a schedule that's locked in every day. We're going to do these drills and we're going to do it for this amount of time. And I just think that you got to be more fluid than that. Takes us into part 2 here, Kenny. We're talking about physicality during the weeks. You kind of started into this with some speed work and lifting, conditioning, all that. But just kind of how physical are you trying to be throughout the week? You talked about your light days already, but when it's time to go, kind of how are you fitting all that in? And then, of course, the lifting, conditioning work.
Well, I think you kind of hit a lot of it, talking about like, where is your program? Usually for us, we're not going to be as physical as probably a lot of teams are, but our first scrimmage game. So we played a real game last week, but the week before we played a scrimmage game, and we ended up, it's scrimmage, but we ended up winning, in quotation marks, 14 to nothing. Defense played pretty well offensively, offensive line wise, and everybody blocking. We were not real happy. Of course, we played a pretty good little defense and had a lot of things we could fix, but Coach Gould was not real happy with our O-line and the effort and physicality. And so we started every practice on the sleds. So I think depending on where you are in the season, like we probably wouldn't do that week 8 when our kids are tired, but we're coming out the gate. Our kids are still kind of fresh, and that's unacceptable, for us. That level of effort is unacceptable. Well, this past week we played and we won, and our defense had a shutout, but we didn't have the level of effort we needed to have. And I think so. We start out defense this week. Every first part of it is swarm drill, which is basically a pursuit drill that they hate. And so we're going to do that until you show us where you need to be. So I think you've got to modify based on where your kids are throughout the season. You also have to modify based on, are your kids physical in the game? Because if they're not, then you need to practice that. I think our kids, even in games we weren't super happy with them, we're pretty physical. Like that's just kind of who we are, and that's been established. But it wasn't that way when I came in. Like when I came in, however many years ago, we were not very physical. So our practices had to be more physical. And so I think that's something you're going to have to kind of find on your own, depending on where your program is. I do want to kind of mention speed work and conditioning work and that stuff, and then I'll talk about on the field. We try to lift. I think a lot of coaches, when they get into football season, maybe cut it down to 2 times a week or whatever. We want to lift as much as we can lift with our kids. We got a lot of kids that played multiple sports, and so we're careful with what we do with them. But we don't want to lift 50%. That doesn't do anything. We don't do maintenance lifts. That's not who we are. We're going to lift at 70, 80, 90%. We're just going to cut reps. Coach Holmes, I've got a really good strength guy. We need to get him on the podcast, but probably one of the most renowned strength guys in at least the state of Arkansas, runs our guys. And, I think he makes some modifications in season, lifts that might be a little more risky. He's going to kind of modify those. But I don't want to go to, lightweight. Like that's not who we are or what we want to do. We just limit how many reps we do, but we are going to lift. A lot of our kids, like I said, play 3 sports. How am I going to ask the basketball coach to lift his kids during the season if I'm not lifting my kids during the season, or the baseball coach or the whatever coach? We're going to have to get after it. That takes a little bit of time to get used to it. And also as a coach, it takes time because you don't really want to give that 30 minutes a day because you'd rather be doing something with football. But we think it's important. And we try to do some speed stuff inside of that. I think he has 1 or 2 days in there where they'll do some either a hill sprint or a movement this or a movement that. He kind of builds that stuff in because you do want to maintain your speed. We don't have to do as much because we are practicing, and our practice better be full speed when we're going. We don't condition, but we do try to build in our practice schedule high intensity and low intensity. So team's always going to probably be high unless it's Monday walkthrough. Always going to be kind of a high intensity period. Individual, the coach kind of has to modify that. If we're working down block steps, is this a technique period where we're doing a lot of walkthrough, whatever we're doing? When we're doing, we call it pods, where our guards will pull kick, pull wrap. So that's got to be full speed. There's no way around that.
Yeah.
But what I tell our kids on that is, hey, we're going to get 1 rep of buck with each guard, 1 rep of what we call Trojan, 1 rep of what we call belly. They're only going to get 3 reps, in 5 minutes. That's not very much. But when you go, it better be full speed. Then we might go to 4 reps. And so the guards kind of look at me weird the first time, and they go, all right, that's all you're asking for. I can give you, same thing with a running back. You're going to get 4 or 5 reps in 5 minutes, but I want full speed. And so they kind of know that's built in. So we do that on our days also. I kind of mentioned Monday's an easier day. Wednesday's kind of a half day, and Thursday's an easy day. So Tuesday kind of becomes our heavier day. But even inside of Tuesday, you can't go heavy the whole practice. So you got to kind of modify what we're doing there on Tuesday. Make sure we build in breaks on that as well. We are more physical early. Like we did some tackling circuit stuff early August with our kids. We're probably not going to do as much tackling circuit in the season. We might bring it back 1 day a week. I think we might actually be doing it today. I'm not sure. But basically, we're not going to ever go to the ground. Like we want everything to stay up because that's going to the grounds where you get a kid hurt. As long as we're tackling well, then we are going to work with the drills we have. Now, we have some drills that are meant to go to the ground, but they're close contact and, we're less injury risk. So we try to kind of work that stuff. We're pretty physical with our kids, but during the week of practice, our kids, they try to be smart with what we're doing. So that's kind of how we work stuff. For us, when we're going team, everything is full speed, but everything is kind of up high. We're not going to cut. When we pull wrap on a linebacker, we're going to work the technique, but the linebacker and the guard both know we don't want big explosions. Like you and I are just this. We're working pull kick. We work with our scout team D end and our guard that, hey, we're going to give you different looks. Don't blow this guy up. Get through where you're supposed to go. And so we try to work that stuff so we're full speed on it. Routes are obviously full speed on air. We'll do a one-on-one period at least once a week with our receivers, DBs, so we can get some good work right there. That's usually just a 5-minute period, but man, they get after it. They like that kind of stuff. I think if you're not doing that stuff, you're not competing, then your kids are not going to get better. But you got to be careful how much, how often, and how structured that is.
Yeah, you talked about speed work, and obviously you're the Tony Holler. You work on his stuff, the feed the cat system, all that. I've been working with Del Basquette for a couple of years, and they're both kind of old legends at the game now, doing it a little bit different ways, but not much. Most of it's the same. Do very little, do it really fast, and get on with your life, right? The Dell system, the athletic speed movement, where they're doing two days a week. You got to give up 20 minutes to start your practice, right? And to get your sprint work out of the way. I think that's an amount of time that coach can agree to usually, but I'm with you on the lifting. Like you need to be lifting all the time. I don't know that I've ever been anywhere where we cut it back. So that's good, because that's not the coaching tree I really want to live in, is where we cut back lifting during a very physical sport. In fact, my wife even helped me program lifting, a few years ago when I was that guy, when I was the strength and lifting coordinator. And it was like, no, we're not cutting back. Like you said, the complexity. I love that you guys kind of taking some of the more risky lifts out, but man, we got to get in there and just keep staying to work. Getting that sprint work done early. And then we had a guest, man, I'm trying to think who it was even told us. Anyway, they talked about how your speed starts falling off way faster than your strength. Like you get your top strength, and it's like 7 days or something, but your speed starts falling off after like 3 days of not working it. So your max speed, you've got to work that stuff. So you can't just let it go. You can't say, no, we'll work that in the off season, because you're going to slowly get slower over throughout the season. Something else we kind of fell into a few years ago, and I've not been like the person in charge, so I don't make it happen at my current school, but we do a central nervous system primer lift before the game, right? You talk about, you're cutting back lifting. We're adding to, we want to lift on game day. And that's, I mean, there's a lot of science backing it right now. Kind of a lot more guys are headed that way, where you're doing, even if it's, I think the magic window is within like 90 minutes of kickoff, you get a lift in. And obviously sometimes you got to travel for 2 hours and then get there for a warm up and all. So you can't quite do it, but anything within that like 5-hour window is good for the central nervous system. Go and just get a pump. It is lighter weights, right? You're not going in there to try to max your deadlift or anything ridiculous, but just get your body working, man. Get things moving, get that central nervous system primed up. And that way, when you go out and you hit that guy on kickoff, it's not the first contact you've had of the day. Your body is already doing things, right? So I think that's a really neat thing to look into, as people are looking for more and more ways to get more efficient and just better at football. I think that's a great thing to add to your schedule as well. Coach, the last part here, we're talking into situations. So we've mentioned a few times throughout today just how we're working situations in different periods, but I love, and something I've taken from you since the first time we ever had a conversation in a podcast, about the ball should never just be put at the middle of the field and you're just running 1st and 10 plays, right? Every single play should be some type of a situation, a read, something. You got to have guys' eyes need to be trained and disciplined on every single play. And so I've really carried that with me in all of my football thinking. So when you start asking about how do you work in situations, and every play, right? Like every single play, we're working in some kind of a situation. But coaches also have to understand there's big game time situations that you need to replicate outside the game, so your kids aren't freaking out. or don't understand, this is the third down, get to the sticks or whatever. We got to convert. Why would you run a 4-yard route when you need 8 yards? It just doesn't make sense. Okay. You also need to run a 25-yard route when you just need 3. So how is it that you're working the situations into your practice beyond the fairly common, where you're doing it every play?
Yeah. And for us, like you mentioned, we do it during team. So we're always looking for something in teams. I'm looking at kind of a practice schedule I've got. Give me just a second to pull it up here, and I'll kind of show you how we do things. So we do like hash work. Let me talk. One new thing we've added this year is we're trying to go up tempo. Like that's something we've kind of worked on a lot. So I want to throw that one in there first. So we call it Lambo. Just means like super up tempo period.
Yeah.
We also have a NASCAR period where like it's preset plays. So we'll usually work that, during either early in practice, kind of wake our kids up a little bit, or we can do it at the end of practice to kind of test them, but we're going to work tempo. So I think that's one situation you need to work is, can you go up tempo? Like if you're not naturally up tempo, are you working that? Because what if you need it? If you're trying to grind the clock out. So there's tempo questions you got to think about. We'll usually do those at either the beginning of practice to wake our kids up, or at the end of practice. We will always do a situation at the end of every Tuesday, Wednesday. So every Tuesday and Wednesday, it's a random situation for our kids. Like this one, we were down 9 with the offensive ball at 5. So we were going to score a touchdown, kick the extra point, get the onside kick. And then, so then we also will do, all right, we're up 4. We're down 3 with 20 seconds to go. We try to work all those randomness situations at the end of practice Tuesday, Wednesday. So those situations you think about that you want to work, that's when we stick those in. It's on air and nothing crazy there. But you can also work your tempo during that stuff, and you can make it a defensive period. I think right. On Wednesday we were up 4 with 40 seconds to go. So what are we going to do defensively? And kind of went through that stuff with our kids. But anytime we're running team on offense, like literally any snap, we're working what I just call it hash work. And so we'll go hash, left center, middle, right center, right hash. We might only run 6 or 7 plays there, but every play is intentionally, we're looking at, okay, we're on the hash, or here. If you play high school football, 2/3 of the field is away from the hash, and that really can dictate how you want to call stuff, defense and offense. And so we want to work that. So we usually will start off our team periods doing that, where we're working, and I try to make it natural if we can, but really I want to intentionally say, all right, we're on the hash, or we're left center or right center, or we're middle, and we're going to work that stuff. Then every single day we work third downs. So usually on Mondays, they're third and shorts. So 3rd and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tuesdays, they're middles, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wednesday is not very fun because Wednesday is unfortunately the 3rd and 9 to 15 range. What are we going to run in that world? But it allows us to see, and we do it every day. So our kids know third down period, sticks are out there. They can look out there. We got to get to this. We're going to work this stuff. It lets us as coaches know what's going on, and it lets our kids know what's going on and what we like and don't like. And a lot of times you think you're going to like something on third down, and you run it in practice, and it does not look very good. So you kind of look at, okay, we don't like that. And then we always work a red zone period every day. So whether that's, I think yesterday we worked from the 20 to the 10, and then today we're working from the 5 and in. And then tomorrow we're going to work kind of a couple plays from the 20 to 15, and then from the 2-point plays. So we're kind of getting all that work every single day in different parts of the red zone and third downs. And I've said this a lot on podcasts and other things, but usually if you're going to win or lose a game that's close, third down conversion, red zone percentage is going to be what you're going to look at. And so that's why we work those every day with offense. And defense is a little bit different. I let my DC kind of work it how he wants to do it. He does work hashes every day. He works Tuesdays, usually a drive the field kind of day. So we randomly will get third downs. It'll be a first down, a second down, a third down, play after turnover. He's working all that stuff kind of on Tuesdays. Mondays is mainly base stuff. And then Wednesdays is all third down and red zone for him. So Wednesday is all third down plays, all red zone, all 2-point plays. So that's kind of the way he does it. And we just work hashes as it naturally occurs. Where are we naturally on the field? So that way he can work his stuff. But I think that's enabled us to get a ton of situational work in where most people don't really think about that stuff. Or you might do it one day where we're doing it every day. And I think we've seen the benefits from our kids that we're very comfortable in those high pressure situations. This last game, we were kind of trying to grind the clock out. We had 4 starters out on defense. We were trying to protect our defense. So we were, pound the ball. Well, it's 4 minutes to go in the half. It's 14-0. We've only had the ball twice and we've scored twice. So it's good. But you kind of want to put people away. So we get the ball back. We go down the field and score, get a 3-and-out, use our timeouts, get the ball back with 40 seconds. Our kids are really comfortable. Boom, 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 and score. And now it's 28-0 because our kids had worked up-tempo and 2-minute drill. We probably worked it 20 times since July.
Right.
So for our kids, it was that's what we do. And so we were very comfortable in that situation, which for a team that runs the ball 80% of the time, that's usually not the case. But our kids were very, very comfortable in that situation, and that changed the game. And I think that's what you got to think of a lot of times as a coach is those are the situations that are going to determine wins and losses. If you're comfortable because you're a spread guy running up tempo, you don't need to work those situations as much because it should naturally happen. But if you're not that guy, if you're like me, where we run it more than we throw it, and we're not always looking to be up tempo, we have to make sure that every day of the week we work that, even though we don't run it, because that's end of the game, end of a half. Those are what determine a lot of times who wins and who loses. And then if you're the opposite, if you're a spread guy, what are you doing in the red zone? Because 10 personnel down the red zone is usually not great. So what are you doing that's maybe unique down there to help yourself out? So those are the things you need to think about. And I think if you practice it every day, your kids get comfortable, and then you get comfortable knowing, okay, we feel good with this, not so good with this. You kind of know areas of weakness early. There was one year we had a quarterback, good kid, but man, he really struggled in up-tempo situations. So we kind of knew we get in that situation, we're going to have to do some unique stuff or make things really easy for him, because that just wasn't an area of his strength. And this quarterback I've got, man, he thrives on it. And we figured that out pretty early. So, we're going to use that quite a bit more.
I love it. How much of your situation work do you think it preps your kids versus your coaches? Because I always see that, like, coaches, I think sometimes we think we're a lot better at situations than we are. And then you get it in a game and you can't get a call out, or you can't mentally think around the corner. What are we trying to accomplish? So how much do you think, have you seen that improve your coaches as well?
Yeah, a ton. It's think about like defensively and offensively and special teams wise, kind of thinking the next step ahead. And then a lot of times, like you mentioned, it's calling plays in high pressure situations is difficult. So the more you can make yourself do that, the better you're going to be. And obviously the kids have got to execute it, but a lot of times as a coach, I don't know how many times I've seen coaches like waste timeouts when they could have killed the ball there, or try to shift a guy and move a guy. Now you lost 20 seconds on the clock, and you see it at the highest levels, especially early in the season, because you don't practice it enough. So I think it's as valuable or more for your coaches as it is for your players.
Yeah, I think it's a good. Some guys may say, well, we don't want to use that practice time. We're still trying to get the nuts and bolts in here. It's not time to get fancy, but coaches need it, right? And hopefully they have the nuts and bolts already done. So getting on to that next evolution of practice for them, I think, is very important. I'll keep my portion short here, man. You really killed it there. Competition period, using best on best. I understand not everyone has. You can't go 2 platoon, and so your best of best may be a mix-up, a mash-up of, hey, when we do these competition periods this week, maybe something similar to our purple and gold, where your guys are just. It's kind of how we did our scrimmage this year, right? You almost have like a lottery or a draft, and you pick kids. That way, you build two somewhat equal teams. But then you can just keep those all year long, and that's your competition teams. You can switch them on offense and defense, etc. And another thing, just mixing in situations to your team period. Kenny, you talked about, specifically third down periods and all that, but telling your punt team to run out in the middle of your team period, right? You've got 12 plays and you run 4 of them, and we got a punt, just to keep people on their toes. That's somewhere we struggled in the week a few years ago or during the game, is like our field goal kickers, our starting defensive end, and he's a tight end, and him remembering where the kicking tee was, or where's his kicking ball, or where's these different, like he never could. Twice in games it showed up, he didn't know. And then I remember another time, we used him as a punter and we used our quarterback as a punter. And we tried to go regular punt, and our quarterback was out there, he wasn't as good. He couldn't bomb it as well, but we like to use him for some gimmicky stuff. And then we tried to go for a gimmick punt and fake it, and our regular punter went out there. So it was like, just once again, as coaches, we didn't practice that stuff enough. The kids weren't prepared. They weren't mentally right for those situations. So I think working those in, I still love going back and watching that TCU run to getting their bottom spanked by Georgia or Alabama or whoever did it to them in the national championship. They came out and hit that field goal with what was like 8 seconds left or something. I mean, that was a very quick from offense to field goal to kick it to win the game. And I still think that you have to practice that. That should be, if you're a special teams coordinator, which some coaches see as the coordinator position that's given away just to whoever, just to give them a thing to do. That should be the level of efficiency you're looking for. Like, we can come out with any amount of time on the clock. As long as my slowest kid can physically run that speed, put a hand in the dirt and hear set hut, we should be able to carry those things out. So, all right, let's work the situation of the week here, Kenny. A little close to home here.
I did my own one.
There we are. You're down 4 starters already due to an injury in a non-conference game. You obviously are practicing that way. So how did you adjust your practice to handle those 4 missing kids?
Well, that's what we're in the middle of. That's why I gave that situation. I felt that might work. We are have 4 kids that start for us on defense that are out. And they were out last week, and they're out this week. And I think we're going to get a couple of them back, we hope, here in the next week or two. But you start looking out there going, if we get another injury here, we're going to be down to some young ones out there. So I think a lot of that stuff, and a lot of coaches are dealing with that. It's kind of the chicken or the egg. Like, because we're banged up, do we need to not work as hard? Or because we're banged up, do we work harder because this kid needs more reps? Yeah. So it's a tough situation there. We try to make up a lot of that with film. These young guys getting film and getting extra sessions of film or walkthrough with our coaches. But we also recognize, man, we better dial it back just a little bit, because now what that does to a team like me is now more guys might have to go both ways. Yeah. And so now, and I learned this from an old coach. I always thought the kid goes both ways, he might need to get some extra conditioning. Like, that just kind of makes sense in my brain. You're going to play both ways. You probably need to practice more so you're ready for it. And I said, well, early on, like early in the preseason, that's probably true. But as you get into the season, your guys that go 2 ways actually need less reps, because they're going to get so many more on Friday. You got to limit them throughout the week. And so for us, that's kind of made us adjust that. And we don't adjust our practice schedule. But one thing we've started doing, and we've been doing it already, but now we do it even more, is we probably give more guys reps during the week than we normally would. A lot of times if you don't pay attention, your same 5 linemen get every snap in team. Your same quarterback gets every snap in team. Your same however many receivers are running back, they get every rep. Same thing on defense. Same guys are getting every rep, because you're wanting to kind of build continuity and that. What we've done, and I think it worked for us, and hopefully it'll keep working for us. Hopefully we're done with the injuries. I'm knocking on wood there, but I think it saved us a little bit, because we were these kids that had to go in were getting reps. Like, it wasn't like they were coming in cold off the bench. That'll kill you. You have to throw a kid out there who's not been getting any reps because you weren't practicing for the potential, shockingly, that in football you might have an injury. So you got to make sure you're on the ball with that. That's forced us to do that. We'll do more of that this week. You better prepare for who the next guy is, because they could be the next guy. But I think you're going to have to just, for us, make sure you're giving extra reps to different kids. Where even if that means your starting running back only gets 10 reps in team of the 20 you're doing, I would hope through individual pod group work, that kid knows your base offense. Let the backup get the reps, because you might need that kid in a big situation.
For sure. That's awesome. Sweet, man. Well, we'll I think we checked all the boxes here, so we'll jump out here. Remember the people that are sponsoring us and keeping the good info flowing. A Sports, mark.bridges@asports.com is a great email. Hit up Mark, talk to him about your next video board. And when I tell you there's options, man, there's so many options. They're putting in things all over schools, indoors, outdoors, whatever sport. They're making things work. You can customize it. And one of my favorite scoreboards in the country is University of Oklahoma's softball stadium, because it's the state of Oklahoma. And then they have it quadrant up or whatever, where it's, where they can kind of use the state of Oklahoma, make it look really neat. Anyway, you can do fancy stuff like that with Ace. It isn't just big squares. We sell a lot of the big rectangles because they're efficient, right? The cost is down a little bit. But if you want something more bizarre, go on. We talked to Michael Beaumont when I was up at one of the clinics here in Oklahoma, and he talked about the Fort Smith North and South, and they went in and put a collegiate / NBA experience in both of their basketball arenas, right? Because he wanted the wow factor. You can do that with Ace Sports. So kind of jump in where you need to there on the Ace Sports stuff. And then don't forget about our guy, Doug, over at Winning Edge Performance Analytics. You can jump over winningedgeperformanceanalytics.com and sign up for that today. Don't forget the code, the 20 off coaching 101, to get 20% off your first year. Social media, I am at Coach Chambo OK. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I do have the website and the Patreon, and then the YouTube, where you can watch this or some other stuff over on YouTube. Kenny, where are you at, sir?
And all things FB Coach Simpson. So FBCoachSimpson.com is website, FB Coach Simpson at Gmail, and FB Coach Simpson on Twitter.
Awesome. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod over on Twitter /X. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.